Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Your Spiritual Journey. This is Dr. Bob, and this is the space and the place where we talk about things important to your soul. As always, we ask you to subscribe, follow us, like us, and maybe even support us on Patreon. And I just want you to know there's still some room for you if you're interested in our trip to Bali in June. So just let me know either from our website or just DM me and we'll give you all the information. So today's guest is, I don't know, somebody that I find extremely fascinating. It's Gil Gillenwater. Also goes by the name of Pal, and he's a lifelong resident of Arizona. He's the founder and president of the award-winning Rancho Feliz Charitable Foundation, which has reimagined border philanthropy since 1987. For nearly 4 decades, he has worked hands-on along the U.S.-Mexico border, building programs that empower communities through reciprocal giving and shared dignity. He is a recipient of the Hon Kachina Award, Arizona's highest honor for volunteerism, as well as the National Association of Realtors' annual Good Neighbor Award, likewise honoring volunteerism. In 2021, he became the first non-Mexican to receive Sonora's Premio a la Filantropía as the individual philanthropic person of the year, recognizing his cross-border philanthropic work. And I apologize for those pronunciations. I'm not fluent in Spanish. In 2009, Gillenwater partnered with the nonprofit Free the Slaves to launch the Free a Village program, an ambitious initiative that helps entire villages in India, often up to 20 families, transition from slavery to freedom within 3 years. The program's community-wide approach to liberation and empowerment caught global attention and was selected by former President Bill Clinton as a featured initiative at his Clinton Global Initiative, a gathering of the world's leading thinkers, philanthropists, and changemakers. A lifelong student of Eastern philosophy and meditation, Gillenwater is a black belt in Kenpo karate and a certified hot yoga instructor. An outdoorsman at heart, he has had countless wilderness adventures around the world and has visited over 75 countries. In 1994, he and his brother Troy were among the first Westerners granted access by the Communist Chinese to Tibet's forbidden Himalayan hidden lands. His 6 expeditions and time spent studying with remote Tibetan lamas and mystics inspired a philosophy of enlightenment, self-interest that now guides his approach to social change with Rancho Feliz. And with that, well, before I go into that, I want to talk about this book just for a second, and I know we'll get into it more in depth later. But this book that you can see on YouTube, Hope on the Border, how a ragtag band of warriors and a bronze statue redefined charitable giving on both sides of the U.S.-Mexico border. Has won numerous awards. The Literary Titan Book Award for Nonfiction, the 2026 American Writing Awards for Social Justice, the 2026 American Writing Awards finalists for Nonfiction Book of the Year, American Book Fest 2025 Best Book Finalist for Social Change, and the 2025 Literary Global Book Award for Nonfiction Inspirational. And that word inspirational is the first thing that came to my mind after I read this book. It's extremely inspirational. Before we get into all that, Gil, if you would mind letting us know about your spiritual journey from childhood till now, and then we'll get into your book.
You bet, Bob. Thank you. And thank you for having me on this inspirational show. That's a good word to use back at you. My path has been a bit of a strange one because I swear I tell people I'm doing all this charitable work now to work through all the negative karma of my youth. I was a little short guy and I loved to tease people and was always in trouble in class and everything like that. And so I think that a lot of this is getting back to zero. But I first became interested in service work and charitable work through my studies of the mind. I started with self-hypnosis and hypnotism, and I was just incredibly intrigued by the idea that what you believe true is. It's really no more complicated than that. And the power that we have to affect our exterior circumstances and interior circumstances by the way we think. And so hypnotism led me to the Institute of Noetic Science, which is a fascinating organization, which somehow I transferred over into Hinduism with Paramahansa Yogananda and his meditation. And meditation then led me to a man, just a crazy, wild Buddhist monk named Chogyam Trungpa, who wrote a book called Shambhala, The Sacred Path of the Warrior. And that just absolutely intrigued me. His bottom line in that book is how to create an enlightened society. And I am not a Buddhist. I don't like labels. But of all the religions and philosophies that I've come across, Tibetan Buddhism, to me, seems to be the most pragmatic. And that's why I've resonated to it. And implementing a lot of what I've learned in the Tibetan Hidden Lands, I've been able to utilize in our work on the border, and it functions. It works very well. It's basically, how do we appeal to human nature?
So I'd like to take you back to your childhood for a minute and just talk about what religion you might have been raised in, or what your spiritual background was as a youth.
Sure. Yes, my parents were from Kentucky, and I was raised Presbyterian. My mother felt she had an obligation to expose us to organized religion. I don't have real good memories of that. I do remember that I had 2 days off from school, Saturday and Sunday, and church took up half of my Sunday. So I don't have a good memory of that, although I do appreciate the exposure, and I do appreciate what organized religion has to offer. I think that it's like, I always think of it as like a drinking cup. Some people like to swallow their truth through a tall, thin blue glass, and others like to drink their truth through a short mug. And it's just what resonates with us, how we like to ingest a truth that makes sense to us and makes our world make sense.
Yeah. So I imagine working with the population in Mexico that you run into Catholicism a lot. Is I guess, is there a sense of that rootedness in the Catholic faith? And I guess what I think of as I went through your book, thinking of some of the statuary and the Virgin Mary and that strain of mysticism, I guess, that comes from Catholicism. There seems to be a rootedness there in the Southwest understanding of the divine. So how has all that worked into your belief system and what you've been doing?
Well, you're very perceptive, Bob, because it's absolutely true. If you work on the border, you're working with Catholicism, because Catholicism, Mexican Catholicism, is kind of an interesting mix of their former, the indigenous people's original Aztec beliefs. And, they subsumed so many of the indigenous beliefs into Catholicism. So it's kind of its own blend in that respect. And what I find intriguing is that a lot like with the Virgin Guadalupe, and I am a huge fan of the Virgin Guadalupe, but she has many of the same attributes that I find in the Tibetan Buddhist Vajrayogini. I mean, even to the, even like the Virgin Guadalupe, for instance, is standing on a sliver moon, a dark moon, which represents symbolically her overcoming the evil forces of darkness. Vajrayogini is standing on top of the five senses, which means she has overcome the traps of living our lives strictly through the five senses. So there's a lot of commonality, and what I attribute that to is just human nature, understanding human nature and what people resonate with. A lot of the Catholic symbolism and Buddhist symbolism is because people couldn't read. This is the way these messages were imparted to the average citizen of these various civilizations. And so I find it on the opposite side of the world 5,000 years ago, yet we have these similar concepts when it comes to what we need to believe, how we need to make sense of our world, and so on and so forth. So you're absolutely correct. It's a big part of our work down on the border. I will tell you that there are aspects of it that are holding back what I think is the progress of human evolution. There are some beliefs that just don't serve humanity anymore, and I would like to see those change, but that's just me.
Yeah. So how did this all come about? That you determined that not only was this a worthwhile endeavor, but that you seem to have made the impossible possible. So could you take us on that journey from the original decision to say, okay, I think I can organize a bunch of volunteers to do some good work here that will benefit
Yeah.
not only the recipients, but be of great benefit to the volunteers themselves. So can you take us through that process? Because it sounds like there was a germ of an idea there that suddenly just exploded.
Absolutely. First of all, I'm a huge advocate of meditation. And I'm not meditating on anything. I'm not talking about prayer. I'm just talking about sitting down and watching your mind. And you suddenly realize that your mind isn't necessarily your friend. And then we start to understand that our thoughts are just that. They're just thoughts. We don't have to buy into them. And do you know how liberating it is to finally become aware that you don't have to believe everything you think? And I am an advocate of meditation knocking off the rough corner, the hard corners that separate me and you. When I meditate or when I'm in service, there's the distinction between the person across the table and me is blurred. We suddenly realize we're all part of the same thing. We suddenly realize that person across the table has the same hopes and dreams and wants and fears that I have. And what is particularly egregious to me, Bob, is the fact that the difference between me and the people that live on the border in Mexico? Luck. Just blind luck. I was born in the United States of America and they weren't. And that's it. I mean, in the United States, we call it the land of opportunity for a reason. So with that understanding, I realized, and I took Trungpa's book to heart, that I have been given all these privileges, and I can make a difference. I can make a difference in the way we relate to each other. And so that's when I started bringing people down. I find that I can talk to them, show them videos all day long, but until they come into Mexico, cross the border from $18 an hour minimum wage to $14 a day in one step, and see the suffering that that type of a wealth inequity engages, they don't really understand. I've had 28,000 Americans cross the border, stay in our dormitory, and work building homes. We sponsor scholarships. I think we've distributed 23 million meals. And Bob, what dawned on me was we feed their stomachs, but they're feeding our souls. I think America, we just got our 2024 World Happiness Report. Out of 143 countries, people under 30 in America dropped to number 62 in arguably one of the most affluent countries in the world. And Mexico's number 25, yet you have all these people from an unhappier country trying to get into a happier country trying to get into an unhappier country. No, what in the world is that about? I think that our priorities in America, just sitting around taking pictures of ourselves, the social media thing, is a direct path to unhappiness, to discontent. We have suicide rates now that are higher than we've ever experienced. And what my contention is, I have a way to fix that. I have a solution. And that solution is getting involved in a project larger than yourself, getting out of your own mind. And when these students go down and they put a roof on this little house, and they meet the little family, and they know the next time it rains, that family's not going to get wet, they have fed their souls. They feel purposeful. They have a meaning much greater than taking a selfie. And they go back, and it really helps reweave the moral fabric of our own communities here in America. So I have this feeling, I don't know whether it's a drive or an appointment, but it just seems to me, and I was a football player. I was a running back, and when you're given the ball, your job is to get it as far up that field as you can. I've been given the ball for some reason in helping people understand their interconnected nature and making them happier, more productive people.
So when you say you've been given that, how do you feel that happens? Because a lot of people at a certain age find their purpose. Like, I feel like I found my purpose when I was in my 70s. It took me a while.
Interesting. Interesting, Bob, yeah.
So is it an inspiration that just came to you? Was it a sense of, okay, this is a purpose that I've been given, that I was actually given when I came into this incarnation, and I've just discovered that this is what I have to do. I have no choice.
Yes.
I have to do this.
Yes. Well, I'd like to explain that in two ways. One is I agree. I truly believe in the practice of meditation to give us this insight. I also was fortunate. I was born parents that had an acute sense of social justice, so I was introduced to that early on, and I realized the inequity of America and pretty much the rest of the world. Do you know something like 47% of the world, which the population's right now 8.25 billion, 47% of those people or roughly 4 billion people live on less than $6 a day? I mean, we don't realize the extent of our privilege in America, and that's part of privilege, is not really realizing how privileged you are. You have that privilege. The other thing, Bob, is that I realized early on that serving others, charitable work, has been explained in a way that will never gain traction with human nature. We've been presented with this idea that it's a sacrifice. It's something we do when we have leftover time or leftover money. Well, I always think of a group of college guys watching TV, drinking beer, and the game's over, watching football. Game's over, and they say, well, what do you want to do now? One of them pipes up, I got an idea. Let's go sacrifice. Baloney. It's not our nature. Sacrifice comes from a position of lack. There's not enough to go around, so I'm going to give you some of mine, but that just breeds resentment. My contention, and I call this enlightened self-interest, the most selfish thing we can do for ourselves is serve others, because it opens the world wide up. And I'm not a very religious person, but serving others is truly the commander of coincidence. You want your life to start going better. You want that check to show up in the mail. And this sounds crazy, like I'm from Sedona or somewhere like that, but it has been my experience, and it's been my 28,000 volunteers experience, that serving others is the most selfish thing we can do for ourselves.
Well, I think science has proven that out. A lot of the recent brain studies and happiness studies, have documented that the more that you engage in service, the happier you are, the less you're focused on your issues and problems, and the longer your lifespan.
Yeah.
And they've got the data to back that up. So
They do, and it has to do with the left prefrontal cortex. And the more you're in service, just what you said, your baseline happiness goes up. You can make yourself, through neuroplasticity of our brains, you can make yourself a happier person. I mean, the implications of that are absolutely off the charts.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it was so refreshing to find a book that has so much practicality in it, and at the same time so much spirituality. The combination that you've managed to weave through here, and I know that you give your editor a lot of credit at the end of the book, but she had some great stuff to work with. There's no doubt about that. It's probably one of the most intriguing and inspirational books that I've ever read. And the pictures are fantastic, the artwork. And I'd like to get into that a little bit, because as you made decisions about this book itself, I wondered how much you just focused on the writing of it and left the format and the design to others, and how much, I guess, input you had to what you wanted the final product to look like. And that's just my curiosity as a writer. I'm wondering about that.
Well, first of all, that was quite a compliment you just gave, and I truly appreciate it. This book is the culmination of 40 years of my life working on the border, trying to make the world a better place. I've never taken a dime. I volunteered for 40 years to create what we have in place now. And with the book, it was so important to me. First of all, writing a boring book is a sin in my eyes. I mean, make it exciting. I've got stories in there about getting surrounded by gunmen and a guy that got lost for 8 days trying to get a better life. And I mean, I'd like to keep that book moving quickly. So my editor was great at going through. And then she had an extra challenge in that we introduced this Virgen de la Frontera, the Virgin of the Border, who is this iconic bronze that I actually commissioned a sculptor to make as the symbol of the what I call the third nation. to me, the border is like a 10-mile strip. It's not really America. It's not really Mexico. It's a tercer país. It's a third country in and of itself with this mix of bizarre religion and drug smuggling and cocaine cowboys and people trying to get across the border and the border patrol. I mean, it's a weird place. And to me, it was important that, I mean, first of all, when was the last time you heard any good news about our southern border?
Yeah.
In a long, long
It's not
time.
there,
And there
right?
is good news and there are answers. You know, one of my contentions is that we need immigrants in the United States of America. We need them. And we had a program, it started in 1942, called the Braceros Program. And it was put in place because our men were over fighting World War II. We didn't have anybody to pick the lettuce and the chilies and things like that. So we actually went into Mexico and brought up 5 million Mexican workers into the US. And we let them work. We vetted them so we knew they weren't criminals. We taxed them so they weren't a drain on the system. We paid them well and we let them go home. Where is the mystery in that? We're an aging out culture. Our society's aging out. We need younger workers. So that's one solution. I've got another solution for the 20 million illegals that are living here. They call it, it'd be a terrible way to live. They call it the golden cage. Yeah, you're surrounded by gold, but you're always afraid ICE is going to come in and rip you out of your bed and send you back to Guatemala. There are solutions to these things. Unfortunately, we have a political atmosphere where nobody wants to give anybody else credit for anything. And the suffering that I have seen firsthand with my own eyes is reprehensible. History is not going to judge us well. We ought to, every American, we ought to be extremely ashamed for what's going on right now and for inviting these people to come in the first place, and 13 million of them did come. This isn't a political statement. This is a fact, and I've seen it, and I saw them pouring through the border, and I saw the Border Patrol sitting there saying, hey, we have orders to stand down. And 9,000 a day. The cartels were making 27 million a day. It was a frickin' zoo down there. And I feel I have an obligation to let my fellow Americans know what really went on.
Well, I'll tell you, I got a real education reading this book. And there's so much to know. Just the fact that, you know, the story you told about 1,000 people lined up as refugees trying to get through the wall, and the cartels, you know, carving out space in the wall so that people could go through, and the Border Patrol saying, please take pictures, let the world know what's going on here.
Yeah, you know, you did read the book.
I did. I'll just tell you the stories in here, and I highly recommend this book if you want an education about the border. That, you know, we just, like you said, our information comes from the news. The news is always negative because the news is about fear. Our politics is about fear. So to find hope, and, you know, that's what I see in your book, is the ability to find hope where fear reigns. And that's such a, I don't know, it transports a person, you know, as they read through that. Your opening story is so gripping. Could you just talk about that a little bit? That experience that you had with being at gunpoint and fearing for your life?
Yes, absolutely. And I'd like to begin the discussion with the fact that we have had 28,000 American volunteers come down, stay in our dormitories and in our private rooms and serve, and we have not had one single incident of violence. So on the with this story coming up, I don't want people to get the wrong idea, but there is a drug trade, and we have to take claim for our part in that. If we weren't, as a society, sniffing stuff up our noses, there wouldn't be an issue, but we do. We're the largest consumer of illegal drugs in the world, and that funds a massive black market. And so it's going on all the time. Interestingly enough, we have such a good reputation down there that people understand, both good guys and bad guys both understand that we have a place and we need to be left alone. So, but the wall has always been an enigma to me. Do you know what it costs right now to build a mile of the wall?
No.
Bob, it's right around $30 million a mile. A mile. Can you imagine? $30 million a mile. And it's going on, and it used to, in front of Agua Prieta and Douglas, it would stop. And I was always, wait, the wall, it's not a mountain range, it's not a river, it's a mental construct. And we built it out of here and it stops. So over there, I used to take the students and they could step into America, and then they could step back and, get the idea there. But in this certain place, I liked it because I knew it was a smuggling corridor, and I wanted to get on a video we were putting together. So we went out really early in the morning thinking there would be no activity. Because as you mentioned earlier, certain smuggling groups own certain sections of the wall. And by own, I mean if you're going to cross, be it to get a better life or with drugs, you have to pay the person that's in control or the organization that's in control of that section. If you don't and you get caught, it's a horror beyond anything you want to think about. Well, we got out there early and we were filming and we were coming back, and all of a sudden I saw contrails of dust coming. The brush was about chest high, and I'm going, oh no, 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 no. And all of a sudden, 6 cars burst through the underbrush, and 6 guys jumped out with the black masks and the automatic weapons, and they got us in a crossfire. I could tell they knew what they were doing, and they're screaming, "Fuera, fuera, fuera, fuera." Well, my crummy Spanish at the time didn't realize that meant get out. And so I put my hands up. That didn't do any good. Finally, my cameraman and I said, just jump out on the ground. We jumped on the ground. We heard the thundering boots and a knee goes in my back, and they handcuff us. And I don't know if you've ever been handcuffed, Bob, but it's not a good feeling because you have completely lost control at that point. Jerked to our feet, and I'm looking at them. And they start taking off their masks, and I looked on the lapel, and it said, Policia. And I said, un beso, give me a kiss, because I can deal with the police. And so they wanted to know what the hell we were doing there. And they put cameras down our gas tanks, and they said that the American Border Patrol tipped them off. I'm not sure if that's true or not, but it turns out I was friends with the mayor of the town at that time, and they let us go. But there were a few moments there, because if it had been the bad guys, they're usually hopped up on something, and they're trained, they've got a gun for a reason, and they want to be engaged, and you get one of the 6 that pulls the trigger and all hell will break loose. So that was a very frightening incident for me.
Yeah, well, the way that you tell the story in the beginning is we know you lived through it because you wrote the book. So we have
Right.
We have some
Right.
sense of, okay, whatever this is, he's going to get through it. But
I think my purpose of that story was, first, it's a reality, and it's still the wild, wild west. I mean, it is still the wild, wild west down there. I do a lot of, my brother Troy and we hike the migrant trails in the Cabeza Wilderness area in the United States. And we follow these trails and we find bodies of people that were told that it's not that long a walk, and they get out here and are you there? and they get out here and they start walking, and it's a desert. They've never been around a desert, and it's not long before they die. And then we can get them DNA'd and hopefully let their family know they're not coming back. But it's a bad situation.
Yeah. So you talk about your brother a little bit in the book, and I'm curious to know, has he been with you on this adventure the entire time, or did he join after you started the work? How did that happen?
Interesting question. He's 6.5 years younger than I am. We've traveled all over the world together. He's as close a friend as I've got. He was with me on our initial drive down there, and he's always been involved in we have these extreme sport, extreme karma bicycle ride fundraisers. He's always been very supportive, but he just wanted to be his own person, and that this wasn't his path. So, but he's still one of my biggest donors, biggest supporters. He's just a great guy.
Yeah, I think that's a terrific relationship that you've got going there. So the description that you gave of watching this parade of over 1,000 people dressed differently, of different cultures and different languages, lining up at the border, and obviously paying the cartel to let them cross. The instructions that they're given once they get here. Talk about that a little bit, and what that's supposed to legally allow them to do.
Yeah. Well, first of all, poverty is not a qualifier for asylum. You know, there's, like I said earlier, 4 billion people living in extreme poverty, and we don't have room for all of them. We'd like to, but we don't. And so they have to have a story how their life has been put in danger. And I was talking to people from the Congo and from Japan even, and China and Russia. They were from everywhere, and they all had a story, and the stories were all remarkably similar. There was a big push over social media. I hope I live long enough to find out who really was behind this effort, because this was a highly coordinated, highly funded. I had the plane itineraries. See, when they would cross the border, they would throw everything away where they could be identified, because their story wanted to stand, that their lives were in danger, and they didn't want to be found out who they were. So there were money, so people couldn't tell where they were from. There were their plane itineraries. I've got probably 58 different passports from all over the world that they would just throw on the ground. And the story was always the same. They knew, come across the border, take a right. The first person in uniform say, I want asylum. They would be processed. They'd be put in an unmarked bus, which I always thought, why? I'm the taxpayer. Why are you hiding this from me? The check-in points would be a mile off the highway, so you couldn't see them. Then they would take them to hotels in Phoenix and Tucson that were all surrounded by canvas, and they wouldn't let you in. I got into one because I said I was the president of the Rancho Feliz Foundation and I wanted to volunteer, so I did get to see it. These were highly coordinated efforts. Then they would put them on jet airplanes and fly them all over the United States. Somebody was behind that. It wasn't me, it wasn't you, but there was a concerted effort. And to what end, I'm still at a loss. Was it to bring in more voters? I don't see that as a realistic motivation. I truly don't know, but it was extremely well coordinated.
Yeah. Speaking of voters, after going through your book, it really made me think, this guy Gil is somebody who should be at the federal government level advising people about immigration. And, with your background and your knowledge and your firsthand experience, I would want you at the highest government level helping people make decisions around immigration. Has that thought ever crossed your mind, or some of the politicians you've run into talked about that?
No, I'm 71 years old, and I really don't want to start a new career. I love what I do right now. I get to be Santa Claus. We give people new homes. We feed people. We give. I mean, I'm in a place right now that I don't know how it could be more purposeful. And getting into politics, I'm not sure that's the word I would use to describe it. So I appreciate your thought. I would be happy to advise or to tell people what my experience has been, but as far as a career, I wouldn't be interested in that.
Yeah. So tell me about the wall some more. You call it an enigma. Uh, does it serve a purpose? Should it just be torn down and that $30 million a mile be given to the people who need it?
You know, I stay out of politics. This is just what I have seen in my logic. The wall worked. Unfortunately, it's a great 6th century solution to a 21st century problem. I mean, really? You're going to build a 2,000-mile wall? Well, believe it or not, there's 82 different walls throughout the world right now protecting sovereignty. So we didn't make up that
Yeah.
program. Um, I have been down, I've been walking the migrant trails. Illegal immigration in the United States of America has stopped. It didn't slow down, it stopped. And a large part of that was the wall. Now they're coming up with these technological walls, and a bunch of the drone technology that has been learned in Ukraine is now being transferred down to the border. So a lot of the really hard to get to places where your tab goes up to 50 million, 60 million a mile to go through the mountains, they'll be able to patrol with drones. But there's still going to be, I think the end game is probably going to be around 1,200 miles of actual physical wall. It works. People aren't dying in the desert trying to get a better life because they can't get across. So I wish as human beings we could come up with a better solution than a physical barrier, but at this stage of our evolution, I don't think we can.
Yeah. There are quite a few, I guess, quotes and comments scattered throughout the book uh, that are commentaries on the human condition and the evolution of our cultures and where we are now, where we've come from, and a little bit about where we're headed. If we keep on the current course, uh, where is your sense of hope in all of this?
My sense of hope is that I can come up with a charitable way that appeals to our basic human instinct of greed, aggression, and self-interest, because that's where we are. When I can convince people that it is in your best interest to help others, then they're going to do it. And I'm doing that by not this love thy neighbor as thyself. That's a two-party system. Anytime you have two parties, you have conflict. Krishnamurti said it best: whenever there's division, conflict is sure to follow. My contention is, I love the me I see in you. I see myself in you. There's a oneness in that. We're not separate. Can I give you a real quick example of what a Buddhist monk told me in Kathmandu?
Please do.
Do we have time for that?
Yep.
We were sitting down. His name was Chokni Nima Rinpoche, and there was, I think, 5 of us in 4 chairs, and he motioned for me to grab something. And he was pointing, and I said, "A chair?" Thinking he couldn't remember the word in English. And he says, "Is that what it is?" Yeah, it's a chair. He says, "Well, what part is the chair? Is it the 4 wooden legs?" And I said, "No." And he says, "Well, is it the padded back?" I said, no, it's all the components together that creates the concept of a chair. And he said, how interesting. He says, so what you're showing me there is a chair, the concept, and it exists on its own. And I said, yes, I picked it up. And he said, as you do. And I said, yes. And I picked it up and I shook it. This is a chair. And he says, and it exists on its own as you do. And I said, yes, of course. And he said, well, let me ask you a question. What about the tree that produced the wood that the legs came from? Would the chair exist here today if that tree wasn't there? And I said, no. I'm starting to get a little nervous here. And he goes, and the woodcutter that cut down the tree that made the legs, and the saw that the woodcutter used, and the people that mined the minerals for the saw, and the people that drove the truck to bring the, and the mother of the woodcutter, would that chair be here today if she wasn't there? And Bob, everything's related. That chair doesn't exist on its own. That chair is in process with everything around it, as are you and as am I. And if we can get people to understand that we are all interconnected, and the most selfish thing we can do for ourselves is to serve others, then our society has a chance. Without it, we're going to have this wealth inequity that we're seeing now in America, which is a sure sign of a civilization about to collapse. It's happened over and over and over, but as humans, we can't seem to learn. We're fighting over who gets to drive the ship, and the ship's going to sink and kill all of us. So my great hope is that we can get people to understand that we have to take care of each other. There's a word with the Tarahumara Indians. I used to work with them down in the Copper Canyon called korima. And it means you have to take care of the community before the individual. Now, we're a country founded on individual rights, and that's great. But when you have a Jeff Bezos going around at 65 billion and you got people that work in 3 jobs and can't afford an apartment, that's a society that's going to fail, guaranteed. And so my contention is we need to get many people down into Mexico to stay and understand. I call it the enchanted instant. Look in that other person's eyes and understand, I love the me I see in you. Understand that I have an obligation to take care of you. You have an obligation to take care of me. And we're both going to be better, stronger, more purposeful people for it.
Yeah. Well, so there's hope.
Absolutely, there's hope.
That's good to see and good to find. There's a saying, the good in me sees the good in you. And that's
right on the same track there.
Where namaste comes from.
Yeah, that's
or
right.
That gets shortened to the God in me sees the God in you.
Mm-hmm.
So there's, I guess, an overall sense that this book is a collaborative creation. And at the end, you also give credit to Soderbergh, and I'd like you to talk about him a little bit, just because what you have in there intrigued me, and what he came up with the statue of the Virgin was just amazing, I thought. So how did that collaboration come about? How did you find him, or did he find you?
I think it's quite an interesting story. When I first started this work, I would tell people, hey, I'm going down to Agua Prieta. It's a 4-hour drive, and we're going to volunteer. Would you be interested in going? And every now and then somebody would say yes, but by and large, they'd have every reason. Oh, this weekend. No, I can't this weekend. again, because charity has such a wimpy flavor to it. So that's when I said, I'm going to need to change my approach. So I started saying, we're not volunteers, we're guardian warriors, and we're going to ride Harleys down to Mexico, and we're going to kick ass on poverty. And all of a sudden, all kinds of people want to go with me. And John Soderberg was one of them. He's a big Harley rider with a big beard and a big belly. He became our Santa Claus. He was a perfect Santa Claus, except that he smoked, and I had to tell him to put the cigarettes out in front of the kids. But other than that, he was a wonderful man, talented man, and he was a huge plus to what we were doing. And we have a lot of his artwork down there, a lot of the symbolism that he does. He got it. Certain people get what we're trying to do and how he could represent that symbolically. The Virgen de la Frontera that's featured in that book is literally a piece of jewelry. When you see the detail and the content and the symbolism of people climbing up the mountain of consciousness. And I mean, it's in a league of its own.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
John, unfortunately, just passed away a couple of years ago.
Yeah. Well, his legacy lives on. That's for certain.
Well, I'm glad to hear you say that. I feel the same way.
Yeah. Just sounded like an amazing, amazing person. So it's those kind of collaborations. I guess there's some synchronicity involved in just meeting the right people at the right time to create the right creation that needs to happen at that point.
Bob, you're one of them, and I swear, when you are in service to others, it is the commander of coincidence. It brings people, it brings situations. We needed $36,000 to purchase a building for a child care center. We didn't have the money. A guy made a donation of $300,000. We couldn't get a hold of the stockbroker. I got a hold of him finally on Tuesday, and I'm getting mad at him because he wasn't there to sell the stock, because we don't keep stock, we sell immediately. And he looked it up and he said, well, hold on, Gil, hold on, let's see here. You know what? It's gone up $36,000. The exact amount of money we needed to buy so these people didn't have to tie their children in chairs to go to work. Service to others truly is the commander of coincidence. I've got hundreds of those stories.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know, they always give me chills. And
Yeah.
And if you look for them, they're happening all the time. You just got to keep your eyes open.
I think you're right.
Well, we're about out of time here, and I always give my guest the opportunity to leave the audience with a few words of wisdom. You have spouted a few already, as we talked about hope and the reasons for hope, but the audience is yours for the next couple minutes. So whatever you'd like to say to them.
Well, I do appreciate that. My mantra is, he or she who dies having had the most fun wins. I truly believe it. Our challenge is what brings us the most fun and most joy. And so on that note, life is short, and we need to soak up every minute that we can. And I think, Bob, that you've tapped into that a long time ago.
Thank you for that. Well, audience, as always, take what you've heard and consider it. Incorporate into your life what resonates with you, and put the rest on a shelf until you're ready to deal with it. And until next time, this has been your spiritual journey.